Okay, so the most important effect that Columbus's voyages had on the world in general was called the Columbian Exchange. So, what occurred after Columbus's first voyage was a flurry of exploration and colonization activity that went on for the next couple hundred years. So, Spain was the most successful of any of the European uh, regions to colonize and explore, although a lot of the countries tried. Once Spain uh, engaged in its initial exploration and colonization, all the rest of Europe wanted a piece of that New World pie. So, France, the Netherlands, England, they all attempted but struggled to establish any colonies during the 16th century or the 1500s. The most dramatic impact to the world, though, was environmental. So, this environmental change to the world was called the Columbian Exchange. So, the kinds of items that were transferred from the old world to the new were things like honey, livestock, cattle, sheep, pigs, horses. None of these things existed in the New World before. The only animals that the natives domesticated were dogs. Um, Coffee, that was another thing that was transported from the old world to the new. Olives, onions, uh, fruits, sugar in particular, very important. What the Americas sent back to the old world were things like turkey, potatoes, tomatoes, corn, potatoes in particular, and corn as well. Those things are pretty much the staples of worldwide diets today, and so those plants were not known in the old world prior to Columbus's discovery. So this exchange of materials was called the Columbian Exchange. It involved this exchange of crops, animals, diseases, and also people, since slaves were taken from over here in the old world to the new. The most detrimental item for people in the New World, for the Native Americans, were diseases. People in the New World had no defense against any of these Old World diseases. So the diseases that hit the New World that the Europeans brought with them, particularly smallpox, those diseases ravaged Native American societies, completely destroyed them in some cases. We don't know exactly how many people were killed by European disease in the Americas or what exact percentage was killed by disease, but we think it's somewhere on the order of between 80 and 90% of all natives that died as a result of European exploration died from disease. We usually think wars and pressure on territory killed Native Americans, but in reality, the overwhelming majority of them died from disease. War did not help, but and brutality on the part of the Europeans did not help the situation. But disease was by far the worst effect on the New World. Like I said, the worst disease was smallpox. It ravaged the native population more than anything else. So, the smallpox virus is passed through water droplets or dust particles that enter your lungs. So, a sneeze or a cough can pass it from one person to another. After incubating for 12 days, the virus causes headaches, backache, fever, and nausea. So, after about 2 weeks, if you catch smallpox, you start to get kind of flu like symptoms and you get a lot of fatigue. You have to lay down. Eventually, sores start to develop around your body. First, they come in your mouth, then your nose, and then eventually everywhere. These pustules that spread around your body. You then become very fatigued to the point where you can't really move at all, and eventually those sores also spread inside your body and start to rupture, which causes internal bleeding. So this is what happens when a person suffers from smallpox in its later stages. It's not very pretty. So diseases killed between 80 and 95% of the native population. We don't have exact numbers, but we do have approximations based on Spanish census records. For example, on the island of Hispaniola, uh, this island right here, where Haiti and the Dominican Republic are, that island we think had about 4 million native inhabitants in the 1490s, about the time Columbus showed up. By 1570, the Spanish census showed that there were only 125 full blood natives. So, in less than 100 years, in approximately 75 years, the population of Native Americans on the island of Hispaniola went from 4 million to 125. 125, that's three figures. Everyone else that lived there by 1570 were either Spanish uh, emigrants, slaves, or people who were not full-blood native, who were part Spanish and part native. Approximately 8 million people died in central Mexico, about a third of the population in that region. So we think the Aztec Empire had about 25 million, approximately 8 million of them died. So, speaking of the Aztecs, the Spanish really didn't encounter them for the first 30 years of exploration. They heard about them from various Carib tribes, but the Spanish really didn't venture into the mainland of North America in those early years. By 1519, they did, and the person to encounter them was a warrior and explorer, better known as a conquistador or conqueror, named Hernan Cortes. So Hernan Cortes, he came to the New World as a member of the military, the Spanish military, when he was 19 years old in 1504. He fought in the conquests of Cuba and other Caribbean islands for the Spanish, and became quite wealthy as a result. And he wanted more wealth. All right, so Cortes in 1519 was chosen to lead an expedition of about 5 to 600 soldiers and 11 ships to investigate the rumors of a very powerful and wealthy civilization in the interior of North America. So he landed at the modern day location of Veracruz, Mexico. He got very lucky early on after making initial contact by meeting a young native girl from the Tabasco tribe named Malinali. So Malinali, or what the people in Mexico, they call her Malinche, La Malinche, the traitor. She spoke several native languages, including the Mayan language and Nahuatl, which was the language of the Aztecs. And so she was the interpreter for Cortes. She also became his mistress for a while until he got tired of her and passed her off to another soldier who then married her. So the Spaniards renamed Malinali Marina, and she interpreted for Cortes and also kind of taught him somewhat about the culture. So the Aztecs in Tenochtitlan, they heard about Cortes and the Spaniards, and they believed this was the fulfillment of one of their prophecies that said an evil god would come and rain destruction on their society. And so their prophecy said that this evil god, his messengers would have to be bribed in order to get them to leave them alone. And so the monarch of the Aztecs, or their leader, whose name was Montezuma or Montezuma, Montezuma sent them a lot of gifts, trying to assuage their greed. Instead, what these gifts did was encourage Cortes even more, because some of these gifts included gold, and so Cortes wanted to know, where is this gold coming from, and so that only made him more interested in finding more out about the Aztec civilization. So Cortes and the Spaniards arrived at Tenochtitlan. Uh, he was accepted by Montezuma and held to the people as some sort of god or demigod. So for a few months, the Spanish kind of ruled over Tenochtitlan because they pretended as if they were the messengers of these gods. And eventually, the Aztec people started to catch on. These people were not gods, they were money being greedy. Greedy losers, essentially, and there was a revolt against Cortes and the other Spaniards after Montezuma was assassinated by them, supposedly, according to the Aztecs. So Cortes and his men managed to escape Tenochtitlan and found refuge with the Tlaxcala people. For about 9 months, they took refuge in Tlaxcala, which was about 40, 50 miles away from Tenochtitlan. And the Tlaxcalans did not like the Aztecs, were ready to attack them. And so while there, Cortes built an allied force of tens of thousands of Native Americans who were angry about Aztec domination, and led them against the city of Tenochtitlan and conquered it. So we'll watch a clip here on the conquest of the Aztecs. But what really killed the Aztecs was smallpox. When Cortes and his men showed up, they spread smallpox, and that was really what brought the civilization down.